You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. 1 hour 90.
Hello and welcome to an episode of the weekly Dartscast sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss and alongside me he's back. It is Dart statistician Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well, thank you. All good this end. Great to have you back on and plenty to look back on from the weekend just gone. Plenty to look ahead to that's coming up this weekend. So let's get straight into it with the World Series of Darts finals finished up last night when we're recording this. Gerwyn Price, the world number one, takes home the title in Amsterdam, beating the home favourite Dirk van Duijvenbode 11-10 in the final. And it is a ninth TV title for the Iceman, one away from double figures. And it got me thinking there's still a lot of years left for the top level for Gerwyn Price. But right now, where would you place him in the all-time top 10 and also the PDC all-time top 10?
Well, I limited it just to PDC top 10 because I thought that was the more interesting placing. I think he's just still outside the top 10 all time, but getting even closer as each day passes. I think he's probably 11th or 12th best all time right now, but I don't think he cracks the top 10 quite yet because of just how many great players there are, male and female, from the last 40 years. But what he's done in a very short time has already put him in that conversation. If you look at the other people on that list who everyone would agree on, it wasn't just a 5-6 year spurt that got them there. It was 10, 20, sometimes even 30 years at the top of the game that led to them being the all-time legends. And I think before he can stake a claim as top 10 all time, he needs to sustain this for a few more years. But what he's done in such a short amount of time to already be in that conversation is something that very few players have done. You know, if you look at players, at least other than at the start of the televised era when there was less of a history to look back on, but the more recent players who've cracked in, it is been because of a long CV. Really, Phil Taylor was probably the last player who broke into the top 10 all time quickly. Peter Wright, if he's there now, it's after 10 years at the top. But if you look in the history of the PDC, because the history of the PDC is shorter, and until the past couple of years, okay, the PDC has been open to anyone, but didn't have a separate women's competition where players could rack up titles and build a CV. It's been limited mostly to male players. So the list is shorter, and I think Gerwyn Price is higher up on that. I think whichever order you want to put it, Phil Taylor and Michael Van Gerwen are 1 and 2 or 2 and 1. I think James Wade is still third all time, even though he's not won a world championship. What he's done for 17 years now, year in, year out, being a top 10 player, if not better. Sometimes, there's years where he's the second best player in the world. And every time we think he's finished, he kicks it into gear again. I think he has to take third because of that longevity ahead of double world champions Gary Anderson and Peter Wright, who I have fourth and fifth, and triple world champion John Part. But then at number 7 is where I think Gezi slots in right now. I think Gerwyn Price is the 7th best player in PDC history. As you said, he's one away from 10 televised titles in the PDC. Only Phil Taylor, Michael Van Gerwen, and James Wade have managed to win 10 major titles before. It seems only a matter of time before he'll join them. And by a matter of time, I mean a matter of very little time. He could do it in the World's Grand Prix in just a couple weeks. Putting him at 7, I put him ahead of Raymond van Barneveld. I have Barney at 8. Barney hit the ground running in the PDC, but the longevity at the top wasn't there. After those first few years, the titles really did dry up. He did get the odd title now and then. He won the Grand Slam in 2012. He won the Premier League a couple years later. And he kept making World Championship semifinals for a very long time. But the titles dried up, as did the other successes. And I think the longevity, his CV is very similar to Gezi's in the PDC in terms of success, especially when you factor in there were fewer events. But the longevity didn't match. And I think Gezi has already, by having 6 years at the top, surpassed him. So I put Gezi ahead of him. I'm already it's tough. I have 3 players, 9, 10, and 11, that I don't know the order for. I think Rob Cross, the longevity isn't there yet, but he's won 4 major titles. He's won a bunch of Pro Tour titles. And okay, he hasn't been as good as he was in his first season, but he still is a feisty competitor all the time. I think he's there in the top 11. I think Dennis Priestley, even though he only won the one major, he made so many finals, those 4 World Championship finals, all those World Match Play finals, and longevity, stick around as a contender, and even have a renaissance in the second half of the noughties, where he made some deep runs again. I think that puts him in the conversation. I think Rod Harrington has to be there as well, winning those pair of World Match Plays, making a World Championship final, winning 3 Golden Harvest titles. You might not know what that event was, but that actually was an event that became a major a few years later for a few years, an event in Saskatchewan, Canada, and was one of the richest events on the PDC calendar in the early days. Rod Harrington won that 3 years in a row, beating Alan Warner Little, Dennis Priestley, and Phil Taylor in those 3 finals. Okay, those weren't majors at the time, but just to win that event 3 years in a row shows how good of a player he was and might otherwise be forgotten as a top 10 in PDC history. So I'm going with the top 11. The top 8 I've put in order, and I just can't separate Cross, Priestley, and Harrington right now.
We're now on to 267 episodes, but I think that's the first time we've had a mention for the Golden Harvest Cup. So we're still bringing new content to you guys. But I think all-time top 10, that is a difficult one to judge, as you said, because we are looking back at a longer period of time. The pool of players, the general standard in the game, it has risen over the years. And I think the last time we had a question like this was when Peter Wright won. I think it was the World Match Play last year, and we said, is he now in the top 10? And I said he wasn't far away. A second world title would probably just put him in my list. And of course, he went on to win that second world title at the start of this year. So for me, Peter Wright is in my top 10 of all time. Gerwyn Price, I don't have in my top 10 at the moment, but you have to say, with each year that passes, as his haul of titles continues to grow, he is climbing up everyone's list. And I think if you were to ask our listeners, most of them, I would guess, would have Price maybe in their top 20 of all time. I think that's fair for the moment. And once his career's over the way he's going, you would back him to break into most people's top 10. And I think the PDC top 10, that is an easier discussion to have. And I'd have him in mine already. I think the top 5 you gave yours, we're pretty similar, aren't we? You're looking at Phil Taylor, Michael van Gerwen, Gary Anderson, Peter Wright, James Wade in no particular order for that top 5. And after that, the likes of Gerwyn Price, Raymond van Barneveld, Adrian Lewis, John Park with his 2 world titles in the PDC, Rob Cross, Rod Harrington, Colin Lloyd in there as well, I'll throw in as well. But I think Gerwyn Price, he is comfortably in that top 10 of the PDC all time. And this is someone that's now won a TV title in 5 consecutive years since that first major breakthrough at the Grand Slam 2018. He's continued to progress, won the World Championship last year, got to world number 1 and lost that world number 1 spot earlier this year, but he's now got a second spell as world number 1. He looks to have got that hunger back for the game after what was a stop-start iffy first half of the year with the injury that he had. And he said himself in the interview afterwards on stage after the final on Sunday that he was rubbish for 3 or 4 months, and now he feels like he's coming back and he's getting back towards his best. And you look at how he played at the weekend as well. 4 close games he had there. Matt Campbell went to a last leg decider. Joe Cullen beat him 10-8. James Wade 11-9, and then the decider with Dirk 11-10. And Dirk threw everything at him, and he had the crowd against him in that game as well, but showed his class, showed his experience at the end. And yeah, top 10, I think PDC, that's nailed on. But as far as top 10 of all time, I don't think he's there yet. But the way he's going, I think he's heading that way.
Now, it was the 3rd TV final for Dirk van Duijvenbode, and the closest he's come to lifting the silverware as he loses, as we mentioned, to Gerwyn Price in a last leg decider from 10-9 up. Was this, though, the one that got away from him?
Yeah, I think you have to say it was one that got away for Dirk. And I was looking back at his 2 previous TV finals, the World Grand Prix 2020, which again was against Gerwyn Price, lost that one 5-2 in sets. And that week in Coventry was the week that he really did announce himself in the world of darts. It was only the 3rd time that he'd qualified for a major event that wasn't the UK Open. He had an appearance in the European Championship, the World Championship back in 2015, 2016 time. So it had been a long time for him. And to get to the World Grand Prix, took some scalps and surpassed everyone's expectations that week. And since then, he has kicked on. He's had more deep runs on TV. He's become more of a regular in the major events, getting to quarterfinals of a lot of the events, the World Match Play, the European Championship, other events as well. And this year, of course, he had another run to the final, the Dutch World Series event earlier on in the year. And ran into a red-hot Dirk van Duijvenbode in that final, who averaged 104, beat him 8-2. And yeah, this is the closest by far that he's come to winning one of these TV events. And okay, you look back at his run, first round against Halpaipua, survived a match start at the ball to win that game, and survived another match start in the quarterfinal against Ryan Joyce. And then he gets past Johnny Clayton to make the final, and he went toe-to-toe with the world number one for those 21 legs. He was 8-7 up. He had 82 left, and Gerwyn Price takes out 121 on the ball to make it 8-all. And then Price takes out a 115 in the next leg to break for 9-8. What does Dirk do? Responds back-to-back 180s, 11-darter to break straight back, holds for 10-9. And at that point, he's just got to win one of the last two legs. And against the throw, didn't really get a sniff, did he? We saw Gerwyn Price holding 12 darts to take it to that deciding leg. And in the final leg, Dirk had the darts, but wasn't able to find one of those big visits, a 2-treble or a 3-treble visit, and he left 116 after 15 darts. Gerwyn Price managed to break him in 14 darts to win it, and I think that is going to hurt him, because he knows that he's more than capable on throw of throwing a 4-visit or a 5-visit leg, and to leave 116, not get a chance at a finish within those 15 darts. I think he'll be disappointed with that. But when it comes down to that last leg decider on stage in front of your home crowd, the pressure that comes into it as well, that's a situation that Dirk's not been in very often, has he? And especially in a final like that. So he said afterwards he should have won it, and if he'd have picked off one or two more trebles in that decider, he would have had a chance to win it before Price took out that 90 to win it. So he is getting closer and closer, and I think we said it after he made that last final in the Dutch World Series that he is getting closer, and he is going to learn from those experiences. You'd imagine he is someone that is still got a lot more to learn in the game, but he is still pushing up the rankings. And I've seen talk of him potentially getting in the Premier League next year. And now that it is 8 players, you'd say he's going to have to need more of these runs. He's going to have to make more finals on TV, and he's probably going to have to win 1 or 2 of these titles as well. So he knows what he has to do, and I think getting as close as he did, I think he'll be disappointed, of course, for a little while, but I think he'll think, I got that close. I'm not far away. One of these titles is going to come very soon.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'll be disappointed for even longer than you say. I don't think it'll just be a little while. I think he'll be disappointed until he wins a major title. That said, that could very well be the next event. And because he's a player who builds off of disappointment well. And that's at least what I've noticed from him this year. You go back the World Match Play, he looked like one of the players to beat in that tournament. One of the performances of the first round and one of the matches of the first round against Brian Searle, and then another great performance against Michael Smith. Granted, Michael Smith didn't show up for the first half of that match, but then he just got outplayed by Danny Noppert in the quarterfinal, and that was obviously disappointing because Dirk van Duijvenbode really looked like he could lift the title that week up until that match. But in his first attempt since then, he goes and makes the final. And he has some phenomenal scalps and phenomenal bottle to get there along the way, getting through Halpaipua in a last leg decider, getting through Ryan Joyce, who had a very good couple of matches before that in a last leg decider, getting past Johnny Clayton, who's back on song in the semifinal. Johnny Clayton, of course, having just knocked out Michael van Gerwen. So Dirk van Duijvenbode took the disappointment of the World Match Play and fueled it to a finals appearance here. And he's been doing that all year. He's really upped his game, and he's taken that disappointment of last year where he seemed like he had stagnated and pushed on and motivated him. And I think he'll do the same from this. Was it one that got away? Yeah, you can say it was, because Gerwyn Price didn't play at his brilliant best. And he had the chance to win it. He was 10-9 up. He was going for the match in that last leg decider and had a dud of a leg. But it won't be one that he'll remember as having got away, because I think a major title is in him, and I think it's in him fairly soon. He is a player who isn't just having a hot spell. He isn't a player who he's not just a player who's going to be around for a little while. He looks like a player who's here to stay. And there's been some Dutch players recently who we might have thought that about. Benito van de Pas, who had a few years, was in the Premier League conversation, but then just fell off a cliff. Jeffrey de Zwaan, who had that brilliant start to the season a couple years ago, making major semifinals left and right, beating Michael van Gerwen at the World Match Play, but then disappeared, seems to be rebuilding again. I mean, Jermaine Watermanen with a bunch of semifinals on the floor and on the European tour, but they didn't kick on, and they stagnated and dropped. Every time that Dirk van Duijvenbode has looked like he stagnated or looked like he might have plateaued, he has driven himself to bigger and better things. And we're seeing that again right now. I think he's here to stay. I think he's still on the up. I don't know what the ceiling is for him, but it's still, I think, a long way from where he is right now. And he's already someone who, as you said, is in the outer fringes of the Premier League conversation for next year. Those outer fringes, though, will begin to look a lot closer if he keeps playing like this, and I think he will.
And now we'll move on to our first guest on this week's show. He's a former Weekly Dartscast Legend of the Year and one of the players in this weekend's first PDC Asian Championship. Here's our chat with Paul Lim. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the first ever Weekly Dartscast Legend of the Year and one of the players who will be competing in the first ever PDC Asian Championship next week. Paul Lim, thanks as always for the time, Paul. How are you doing?
Pretty good, yeah. In Japan now, so kind of settling in and, working away and play darts and try to qualify for the World Championship again.
Well, the last time we had you on our show was back in November of last year, so we'll circle back to then, and you just qualified for Ali Pali again. What was the preparation like coming into the World Championship last year with all the restrictions that were still in place in Singapore where you were living at the time?
Oh yeah, that was kind of a really. It takes a lot of you with all those anxiety, on the not sure what's going to happen, and you know, there's so much restriction, there's quarantine involved and things like that. So it's kind of a stress, very stressful. So but now it's becoming better now. So in Japan, in fact, just lifted the quarantine and the testing and all that. So it becomes easier, But still, I think when I come back, if I do qualify to go to the World Championship, and when I come back, I still will have to go to my not quarantine, but just test. That's all. So I think they are just being taking precaution anyway.
Well, the year before you had that excellent comeback win against Luke Humphries. Sadly, that was in front of no fans as the event was played almost entirely behind closed doors. But what was it like last year getting to walk out and play in front of that Ali Pali crowd again?
Well, it's always kind of exciting, but it's tough though. Like I said again, you have to deal with, to deal with the crowd environment, the noise and all that. I mean, but there's no choice. But I think that's what it is, though. I think I wish I could have actually kind of, like I say, be more involved with the circuit over there in Europe and UK, But because of my job, I just can't. So it's a bit difficult. But I still have to deal with it. That's all. Getting through the first round and try to get through and play well, and do a breakthrough. Well, before I retire, what I'm saying? So
we don't want to hear any talk about that just yet. You didn't have to wait long to compete in another World Championship, though. February this year, you were in the lineup for the first World Seniors Championship. We saw on your social media you were practicing with Larry Butler, catching up with some familiar faces. What was it like being back in the practice?
Yeah, pretty good, actually. No, that was pretty good. In fact, like I said, again, I wish I could get more involved in that, but I think that my job just kind of doesn't allow me to kind of really go gallivanting, anywhere I want to go. I still got my commitment to the company here to do promotion and to get involved whatever the company needs me to get involved in. So it's not easy, but they're good enough to kind of like I say again, when they are the major, they would actually kind of work with my time and let me actually go and play that. So my company treats me pretty well, so I'm glad about that.
Yeah, it's good to see you involved in that, and you were involved again for the World Seniors Masters after winning the fans vote to play in the event and putting my cards on the table. Ko Stompe, he's my favourite player, so I was gutted not to see him win the vote. But for you to win the vote, how much did that mean to you to see you've still got that support among the darts fans?
Well, in fact, I was very surprised. Like I said, I know I have my fans, but I knew a lot of other players have their fans too. So I'm kind of pretty honored in a way to kind of be voted in to play that. So it kind of it's a personal satisfaction, whatever it is. But I still want to do well, though. That's the thing. That really bugs me when I just fly over there and I kind of whether I'm able to perform or not, and I just want to perform well because I know I can. I'm saying that's the whole thing. So like I said again, time. There'll be time, and I believe that I'll probably get a breakthrough soon, hopefully.
Definitely, and that event, of course, was held at the Lakeside, a venue steeped in history. Of course, it was where you threw that iconic 9-dart leg. What was it like being back at the Lakeside that week?
Oh, actually, in fact, in that room, when I walked to Lakeside, I mean, basically, it just seems so old. I mean, like I said, the building, I mean, it's just, but it brings back a lot of memories because, like I said, when we went to the players' room, with all the photos and of the players that I played with and I know and things like that, and it just brings back a lot of memories. But obviously, I think it's a shame because I think at the Lakeside, I was with Bob Anderson and then we were looking through the pictures of our era, the players, right? But our pictures were not up there, and my picture wasn't up there too. Even though I was the only one that ever did a 9-dart, but I don't have a picture up there on the thing. It's just something to do with the politics in the term in the early days. They just when we were the one that actually broke away and went into PDC, and they want to kind of put our pictures up there. So that was kind of a sad for me. Sorry.
Well, aside from those 2 trips over here to England this year, as you mentioned, you're now based in Japan. I think you've also been out in America to see family as well. So how good has it been this year to start making more trips again after the last few years where it's been so tough with all the restrictions?
Oh, yeah, I think it is. Like I said, I'm glad. But, like I said, again, there's still the anxiety of travel, but it's becoming better because my last trip, in fact, I went to do a job assignment with Darts Live in Hawaii because our distributor is there. So I have a chance to fly to Hawaii, but straight from there I came back again, But it was a good to break away anyway to do something different. But now I think I am basically just geared into this the Asian Championship next week, and just want to do well and qualify again to go. And the other thing too, there might be the chance that I would go for the World Masters too, in Netherlands. Actually, I qualified for that one, playing in the Japan Open. I won the Japan Open, right? This just a few months ago, a couple of months ago actually. So I'm actually qualified, but somehow or other there's some controversy going on. So I'm waiting for the results to see whether I will be able to go or not, to play. So if I could play that, the World Masters, and from Netherlands I will go to carry on with the World Championship. That will be my perfect ending of this year. That'd be great.
And I was going to mention that Japan Open win as well, because we've seen you playing a few events in Japan over the last few months, winning that event. I think you did the double that weekend as well. They're both WDF ranking events, and I think you said that was the first time that you've played steel tipping in Japan for a long time as well.
Yeah, it is. It's a long time. I remember long time ago, maybe 30 years back, I came to play the Japan Open. I won that, and then I played. There was another time. There was the Pacific Cup. And then after that there was and this time. So really, there was a couple of PDC tournament when we have the Asia tour. That was before the COVID anyway. So the selection is basically based on the tour itself, accumulating of points, going to the different Asian countries to play the PDC tour championship. Basically just a tour anyway. But this year they changed it, so because the traveling is still hard. Hong Kong is still, under quarantine, so and I think they kind of the last minute decision is that to do this PDC Asia Championship in Japan. It's probably is a good thing, but very luckily, right, that Japan just lifted a few weeks ago with the situation on visitors. Before they were saying that if you want to visit Japan, you've got to be in a group tour. And now at least it's wide open again. So that is good news to a lot of the players from the other part of Asia that's going to come to Japan. So they don't have to go through the hustle of got to get a group tour, got to get the visa, a special visa to come in. So anyway, but I'm glad anyway.
Good to hear that. And soft tip, of course, that's still huge in Asia and in Japan. We saw Darts Live return last month with that premium stage event in Tokyo, the first event, I think, for 3 years in the soft tip world circuit. How good was it to see that circuit return?
Oh yeah, it is good actually. In fact, I think from next year, I think they're already planning for the full blown. Like I said, what's going to happen in different countries, whether it's going to go to Hawaii or US or all the different basically country location where they're going to host it anyway. So it's planning. I think next year will be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be back to normal. Hopefully,
Let's get on to what's next for you. And back in June, the PDC announced the first Asian Championship is going to be held in Japan next weekend. When we're talking the pandemic, that's had an impact on the PDC's push in Asia over the last 3 years. So what was your reaction when you saw this new event announced?
Oh, wow, it was great. I mean, in fact, like I said, it has been, we everyone is just wondering what's going to happen. Like I said, again, we really kind of want to get this PDC Asia thing going. Hopefully next year it's going to go back on a tour again. I don't know whether are they going to do this like once a year, like what it is here, right now. But I would prefer to have a tour where we're going to have one in Philippines, one in Singapore, one in Hong Kong and Taiwan, and think the whole of all the Asian countries and do a tour. I think that is kind of really good. I prefer that anyway, than just one tournament, But anyway, I'm glad. Honestly, it was kind of a surprise that this came out this way. But I think the decision was good anyway. We got to get something going anyways to get the players qualified to go to the championship this year.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a 4-day event. You've got $100,000 prize pot. You're going to see players from all around Asia. It's going to be streamed as well, so we're going to be able to watch it. You've got the spots, Ali Pali on the line as well. How much of a boost is this for players in Asia to have this event to have aimed towards for the last few months, and now that it is coming around next weekend, a big prize at the end of it?
Oh yeah, it is. I mean, like I said again, as far as I know, on the social media itself, people are talking about it, and people are kind of, getting all excited and planning. All my friends from Hong Kong are coming in tomorrow, so people that try to qualify, and things like that. And there'll be a lot of Japanese qualifier to just buy to do the first 2 days of qualifying. I'll be there to watch that too, just to kind of get the feel of the atmosphere, things like that, and then see the players, and then we'll be playing on the Saturday and Sunday. So I'm looking forward to this.
Excellent. And lastly, before we let you go, I always sign off our podcast by encouraging our listeners to enjoy the darts. And I saw on your social media, you often sign off by saying your fans to stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy darts. And as someone who's still enjoying their darts in your late 60s, competing with the best, what would be your advice to our listeners who play the game to have that longevity that you've had in the game?
I think it's important that you actually do enjoy the game. Because if you comes to a point that you do not enjoy it, right, and if you want to think about doing it as a profession, then it becomes a really hard push. I think it has to be a combination of both anyway. To the players out there, I always say that, it's like any sports. Like, I enjoy playing golf. I enjoy going fishing. But I'm not a professional golf player, but I still play. But the thing is that if you want to have the longevity, you really have to have the passion for it. I think it's very important. The people that are still playing that for years and years and years, I think they somehow or other in their heart is that they really, really enjoy it. I mean, I do. I get excited every time when I play darts. Even though I play, in a pub with friends and things like that, I still get excited when I do promotions and when I go to the schools to teach the younger generation, the youth program and things like that, which I'm very, very much involved in, because I believe that the future of darts is about, my own passion anyway. I like to see people enjoy and love the game and get better and things like that. So I do my part in getting involved with the high schools and the universities. But as for longevity, I think this is about passion. You really got to. Otherwise, it becomes when you ever think that walking up to the dartboard and it's boring to practice, then I think you're in trouble already. It shouldn't be boring at all. you should have a goal, like practice is an incentive for yourself to get better anyway. So it's a matter how much you want it. That's the way I feel.
Well, Paul, it's always a pleasure to chat to you. Keep enjoying your darts, and we wish you all the best next week with the Asian Championship and what else is to come in 2022 as well.
Okay, hey, thank you very much anyway. Thanks for calling, and to the fans out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy darts.
Thanks again to Paul for joining us. Now continuing our look back at the weekend, and we had another weekend of the Challenge Tour, and it was a record 4th Challenge Tour title of the year for Scott Williams, who looks set for that debut in the Grand Slam in November. But what did you make of the other 4 title winners at the weekend?
Well, I think there's something that you can really say well about all of them. You start with Robert Owen. He had made a pair of finals and earlier this year, one on the first weekend, one on the most recent before this past weekend. But he went one step further, and the consistency he showed across those matches is something to applaud. The first couple matches he was a little lower, just under 93 and then an 85. But everything else after that, 95, 96, basically 97, 93.5, 97, 95, 94, they're all about the same. And they're all good about the same. That's, the James Wade mid-90s, everything a 16 dart leg level. And he maintained that over the course of 6 matches, over the course of nearly 50 legs. And to be able to maintain that consistency across 6 matches and go on to win the title is something that you need to do to really succeed. And he was a player that I said each time he won his tour card, he got a little bit better. He was there making up the numbers his first 2 years on tour, but he immediately won back his tour card. And he was that little bit better, occasionally getting a board final, occasionally getting some big scalps, but still on the lower fringes of the tour. Then he won his card again, and he really seemed to blossom and just missed out on the World Championship both years on that 2-year tour card, but really was looking the player. He's been off the tour for a few years, but he looks back and looks ready to progress again. And I thought it was an impressive day, but also just been an impressive bounce back year for him so far. He, of course, won the first one, beating Christian Kist, who won the 4th one. I'll go to Christian Kist now, because Christian Kist, well, obviously, he won the title in the 4th one, beating Danny Lauby, lost to the final on the first one, which means he lost to the champion. But he also lost to the champion in the second event, Wesley Plaisier, and he lost to the champion in the last event, Scott Williams. The only one where he wasn't either the champion or losing to the champion was the 3rd one. That means of the 5 events, he won 1, and 3 of them he lost to the best player in that event. I don't care what the stats say about Christian Kist. Even if statistically he might have been the weakest of the 5 winners across the weekend, he obviously was playing at a level that was able to beat what was in front of him, and that's all you have to do. And if you were able to beat him, it was probably because you were the best. I think of the other of all the champions on the day, I think Wesley Plaisier was the most impressive. I think those 3 ton plus averages speak for themselves. The match that was in between those 3, he only averaged 98 against Christian Kist, who averaged nearly 101. I think it was just a high level, was able to play out when he needed to across that day. I thought it was really impressive. And then lastly, Jurjen van Duijvenbode, it's his 2nd title, beat the aforementioned Robert Owen in the final a couple months ago. And I think the thing that stood out for him was that he had probably the toughest route, going against 4 former tour card holders en route to the title. Okay, I guess it wasn't the toughest route because he was the only one who didn't have to go against Christian Kist other than Christian Kist himself. But beyond that, 4 former tour card holders, you don't get that often. And he beat them all on the way to the title. I thought all of them should be happy with their weekends. Robert Owen, obviously the happiest of them all, because it now puts him right up there in that chance to win back his tour card through the Challenge to Order merit. Gerwyn van Duijvenbode as well for that same reason, and Christian Kist all there. But I think the most impressive was the other one, Wesley Plaisier, just because of that high standard he was able to reach.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick mention for Scott Williams, because we have kind of left him out of this question, but we have talked about him quite a bit this year. But that title has put him £3,750 clear at the top with just 4 events to go, and the player that finishes top does get that spot of the Grand Slam. And it was a bit of history at the weekend as well. First player to win 4 Challenge Tour titles in the same season. So every credit to him. But looking at the players that did win the titles that we are going to talk about, aside from Scott Williams, and starting off with Robert Owen, the stack attack, very close to your nickname, Burton. I know that's why he's one of your favourite players, but as you say, made 2 finals already on the Challenge Tour this year. We've seen him play a little bit of the online league as well, like a lot of these players have. But I think just what stood out really was just the consistent level that he was producing in that run to the title. 8 matches, 7 of them between the 92 and the 97 average, 85 for the other one. So it was a very consistent level that he put together in that run to the title. When he tweeted himself afterwards, turns out Friday's win was really big. It's put him up to number 2. It's put him in them provisional spots. Of course, the top 2 players get the 2-year tour cards and the spot at the World Championship. And of course, Scott Williams looking good to qualify for the World Championship via the Pro Tour, and he should be in the top 64 at the end of the season. So those spots are looking to go to the players at number 2 and number 3. So Robert Owen in a very good position after that title. And looking at the other title winners, of course, it was a very good weekend for the Dutch players in Leicester, wasn't it? 3 titles going to 3 Dutchmen. Wesley Plaisier, someone that we've seen make his mark on the Euro Tour this year, getting to a quarter final. We've seen him win the Six Nations singles over in the WDF side of things. And the title run that he had started off slow with that 78 average, but then really went through the gears, 96, 103, 98, 100, 101, and then the semi-finals both in the 90 averages as well. And I was having a look as well, the title put him up to, I think, number 15, but he did miss the first weekend of the season. So if he'd have played all the events, he's probably looking towards that top 10, top 8, isn't he? And very similar to another winner as well, Jurjen van Duijvenbode, who I think the first time I heard of him was when he won the JDC World Championship around 2018 time. And, he's still only 19 as well. So he's been around for a little while, but he's got 2 titles on the Challenge Tour this year. He's up to number 5. And you look at what he was able to produce in that final as well, a close final with Patrick Peters, but 140, 134 back-to-back visits to pull away in that decider. That's a sign of a very good player when it's a very close game like that, and showing experience beyond his years. And the last of those players, Christian Kist, a more familiar name to our listeners, a former BDO world champion, former tour card holder, someone that has struggled with injuries, as we know, in recent years. That's why he's not on the tour, because he is a quality player, but got to a final with the first event of the weekend, goes all the way in the 4th event. And that says a lot as well. To play all those games in a weekend tells me that maybe he is heading back towards some sort of form where he was before, and the injury problems are hopefully a bit better for him now as well. And what a run he had to win that title as well, beating Danny Van Tripp and then Lucas Venig, Matthew Dennett, Thibaut Tricol, Karel Sedlacek, and then Danny Lauby Jr. in the final. That is a tough run to win a title. You don't get harder runs than that on the Challenge Tour. And the final wasn't the best standard, under 80 average. It's not going to win you many titles in the Challenge Tour, but it did for him, and finished it off with a 14 darter as well to get over the line. So good to see Christian Kist pick up a PDC title, and hopefully it'll be the start of him making a bit of a comeback in the PDC.
Now, all eyes are going to turn to the World Grand Prix this weekend as the final event before the cutoff, the Belgian Darts Open in Weisse, will take place. Still quite a few players who could sneak into the field, most notably Ross Smith, who is just a winnow behind Roby John Rodriguez entering the weekend, and Roby John Rodriguez won't be in Belgium. Well, maybe he'll be in Belgium, but he's not in the field in the event, at the very least. His brother, of course, is. But of those players who provisionally are in, who do you think most needs a run before Leicester?
Well, look, you can probably discount Gerwyn Price, can't you? Because he's just won the World Series finals, and I don't think he's going to be playing this weekend. I think he said in one of his interviews that he's going to be skipping the Euro Tour this weekend. And myself and our guest co-host Andrew Sinclair last week, we were talking about the buys, the withdrawals that we've had in the Euro Tour this year, a lot of them, and looking at the players that are in the field for the World Grand Prix. I mean, one of the players I'll give a mention to, Ryan Searle. I mean, you look at the back end of last year, made that major final, got so close to beating Peter Wright in Minehead. And this year we've seen him make a final and win a title on the floor. But as far as stage results, it's not probably been what we expected from Ryan Searle this year. He's been in all the European Tour events this year, and he's had one quarter-final. That's been his best run so far. And yeah, I think he'll be someone that will be wanting a good run on stage this weekend to take into Leicester, because last year the World Grand Prix had a good run getting to the quarterfinals. So as we come into this back end of the year with a lot of events, I think he'll want to get a good run this weekend just to take into the World Grand Prix and trying to get back to the form, the results that he was showing towards the end of last year when he did come so close to being a major champion. But aside from that, as you say, it's the last event before the cut-off for the World Grand Prix. It's also the penultimate event before the cut-off for the European Championship. And some of these players that are in the field, you know, we're not going to see them in the last Euro Tour event. And Adrian Lewis is one of those players. This is going to be his last chance to get into the European Championship. I think he's around £5,000-6,000 off the cut-off. So he's in need of a good run. And you also look at the race for the World Championship. Of course, Adrian Lewis, he'll be there regardless. But will he be a seeded player or will he be on the Pro Tour list again? I think he's 32nd on the provisional list at the moment on the Order of Merit. So any good run he can have now to make sure he is a seeder, avoid that first round, he'll be looking forward. Andrew Gilden as well, someone that has impressed this year. He's currently in 32nd spot for the European Championship, the last spot at the moment. This is going to be his last Euro Tour event of the year as well. So he'll need a couple of wins to just cement that spot in the European Championship and make it a nicer watch for the last Euro Tour event when he's seeing potential players jump him. And Chris Dobie as well. He has got that cushion of being in the last Euro Tour event, but he's in 31st spot, so he'll want to have a decent run. And Kim Huybrechts as well, another one that's not in the European Championship. This is his home event, home crowd. He'll want to have a good run regardless, but to get into the European Championship as well, he'll want to have a good run. And yeah, he's looking pretty good for the World Grand Prix. I think $6,500 clear of Ross Smith, who, as you say, he's the one that everyone's going to be keeping an eye on this weekend because he just needs one win to jump Roby John Rodriguez for that spot. And looking at who else has qualified for this event, players that are going to be needing a good run to sneak into that World Grand Prix, you're looking at someone like a Vincent van der Voort, a Ryan Meikle, Keane Barry, Simon Whitlock, Mervyn King, players that are in the field for this weekend, not in the field for the World Grand Prix, but more than capable of going on a deep run, making that final session. And yeah, there could be a few players nervously watching on Sunday night.
Yeah, and most of those players you mentioned further down will need a title. Ryan Meikle would only need a final to crack into the field, but he's also chasing a spot in the European Championships, currently in one of those last few spots. But even if he can't make the final here to get into the World Grand Prix, just winning a couple matches will do him wonders to get to the European Championship. Vincent van der Voort, of course, only needs a quarterfinal. But other players currently needing a run, you mentioned most of the ones I wanted to mention. I've said this the last couple of times we've had questions like this. Ryan Searle, his stage game just hasn't been there. And even when it has, it's disappeared the next match. When he's put together those performances that we got so used to seeing from him, those ton-plus averages, the next match, the next day, he's averaging 85. And that's not the Ryan Searle that has been climbing up the rankings over the past year. That said, even before breaking through, Ryan Searle was a player who would look $1 million for a few months and then disappear for 7 months, and then would look $1 million for a couple months and then again disappear for 7 months. And even he said he wasn't sure why that was the case. Maybe this has just been one of those times where he's disappeared. But if he wants to reappear in time for the big events at the back end of the year, this is when you need to start performing. And maybe the break, maybe that month off will have helped him. We will see. But he is definitely in need of a big run because his Pro Tour ranking will start sliding. And if his Pro Tour ranking starts sliding, then the pressure will be on for him, not just to defend the money to stay near the top 16, but even to get into the big televised events next year. Beyond that, some players who I think might run here, I've got to say Dave Chisnall. Chizzy's, as things currently stand, the 16th seed. Who knows if that'll be the case after Gerwyn Price and other people inevitably withdraw. But Dave Chisnall, he's the 16th seed. He's currently the number 16 player in the overall order of merit, and he's just barely in the top 16 of the Pro Tour order of merit. There aren't any more Euro Tour qualifiers for this year, but finishing the year in the top 16 of the Pro Tour order of merit would put him in the seeds. I think he needs a run, one, to give him confidence heading into the World Grand Prix, but two, to solidify that spot in the top 16 of the Pro Tour order of merit. He's less than 10,000 pounds ahead of Martin Schindler, who's in 17th. And Johnny Clayton is just outside that in 18th as things stand. But Johnny Clayton's the type of player who, if he won the title in an event, you really wouldn't be that surprised. In fact, you almost expect him to have a good run every single event. So Chizzy's spot in the top 16 of the Pro Tour order merit, as well as the overall order merit, is hardly secure. And I think a big run to get him confidence entering Leicester, as well as to keep that top for him right now. And, you know, I'll also say, I mentioned Johnny Clayton. I'll mention him again for that same reason, to get back to the top 16 of the Pro Tour order of merit, where his ability and most of his performance merit him being, but the results haven't been there this year. And that's why he's dropped out of the top 16 of the Pro Tour order of merit. Johnny Clayton will be one of the favorites in Leicester, even if he goes out second round in Belgium. But a deep run like he had this past weekend in the Netherlands will just re-solidify that he has re-solidified himself as one of the top 4, 5, 6 players in the world. But doing it in a ranking event is key. That's where he's always done less than he has in the non-ranking events. So doing it now when it matters, putting that 25,000 pounds on the ranking order, getting back to the top 16 of the Pro Tour order merit, that has to be the goal for the Ferret in Belgium. And we'll see if he can do it.
And now we'll move on to our next guest on this week's show. It is with the ITV pundit and commentator, Chris Mason. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the ITV pundit and commentator, Chris Mason. Thanks for the time, Chris. How are you doing?
Absolute pleasure, pal. I'm really well. You?
Doing good, thanks. And let's start off with a look back at the weekend. You were in Amsterdam as part of the ITV team for the World Series finals. Gerwyn Price winning the title, an up and down first half of the year for him, but is he now getting back to his best at the right time?
Yeah, it looks that way. He still had to come through some real tough games, and no more so than that final. I thought Dirk was fabulous in the final. A few missed doubles early on, and it was Pricey that was chasing him all the way down. But it was a great tournament in a whole. There was some fabulous matches, and it was finished off with a great final. Only disappointment really was a certain part of the fact. Well, I can't really call them fans. I'm not sure what they are, but that put a little bit of a dampener on it. But ultimately, the right man won, and the deserved champion. And yeah, it's been a good season. What's that? 4 titles for him this year. Michael appears to have had a quiet season, but I was just checking today, and he's won 8 titles this year. So yeah, what lies ahead for MVG and the rest of them is I'm not sure, because they are getting shared around, and I think it's pretty much all on the day, and just small moments are changing the outcomes. But ultimately, yeah, a fabulous tournament for us at ITV. We had a chance to go on to ITV3. I know the scheduling was a bit awkward to keep up with, but the numbers from that were absolutely remarkable. So we're hoping that maybe somewhere down the line we get a bit of ITV1 action in the afternoon at some point.
That would be good, and good to hear that the numbers held up as well on the other channel. But just a word on the runner-up, Dirk van Duijvenbode, losing in that final in a last leg decider, and he said afterwards he should have won the final. How close do you think he is to that first stage title, whether that be on the Euro Tour or on TV?
Yeah, I think it's very much like a lot of them, isn't it? Like Michael Smith, Luke Humphreys. There's a fair few of them that have made finals, but it's just not worked out for him in that final. And you need a bit of luck along the way. I think the days of MVG and Phil Taylor just literally carving through the field and being so dominant that you were just going to get outplayed. I think those days are gone. You just need a little bit of rub of the green, the right shots to go in at the right time. You also need your opponent to go off the boil, like Dirk did in that deciding leg. They were both feeling the pressure, but the reason why he's world number one and a multiple major champion is that he's able to hold it all together under the most extreme pressure. But that only comes from doing it. You have to go through it and get over the line to learn more about yourself, I suppose. It's more like a self-examination. And of course, we know that Gerwyn Price and Michael van Gerwen and all the ones that, Johnny Clayton,
Peter Wright, they've all done it multiple times, and once you get over that line, look how long it took Peter Wright to get his first major. So yeah, you would think with his scoring power, and he seems to be improving, in small increments, which I think sets a player up for a longer career. I do worry about the ones that sort of burst on the scene, because when it all starts to go wrong, they've got no experience to draw on. But yeah, listen, Dirk's a great player. He's a great watch. He's nice and quick. It's tons of 180s. Yeah, and he's easy on the eye. So you would think if everything drops into place for him, then it won't be too far away.
Well, two players that have done it this year and on the ITV cameras as well. Joe Cullen winning the Masters, Danny Noppert winning the UK Open. It could be, Dirk, the answer to this question could be Luke Humphries. I know Josh Rock is someone that you spoke about on the broadcast at the weekend. Who have you got your eye on as maybe the next player to have that big breakthrough?
Yeah, it's hard to ignore Josh Rock. When I follow him and look at his numbers, they are staggering. He's got a ridiculously high ceiling. Wasn't too long ago he lumped in that ridiculous 121 average. Yeah, the guy's got levels, but again, that's not the be all and end all. He's got a lot of hurdles and he's got a lot to learn in the meantime. But he seems a level-headed kid. He's got good people around him, and I just think with somebody like that, if he can retain the focus, stay dedicated, not get distracted, and ultimately, work hard. As I've always said, our work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. So yeah, it's the world's his oyster at the moment, and he's a really exciting prospect.
Definitely is. Well, let's get on to yourself. And as I was saying before we started this last night when we were recording this, I finally got around to watching the podcast that you did with the PDC and Dan Dawson at Blackpool Football Club. Was it something that you wanted to do for a while, an in-depth look back at your life on a platform like that, or was it the PDC who approached you about it?
No, it was. We were just basically going to talk about my career, which we're going to have to do in another podcast. Some people will say, "Well, that will be a quick one." But yeah, it was just one of those things. Me and Dan sit down and have many a conversation over a glass of wine and a glass of gin. And we're sort of really comfortable in each other's company and enjoyed chatting about most things. Majority of it is darts, of course, but yeah, it just sort of went in that direction. Really, we didn't, neither of us had, discussed it in depth what we were going to talk about. But yeah, it just ended up going down that avenue, really. And listen, everybody around me and anybody that knows me well knows exactly sort of what went on and how things worked out. It's only those that think that everything that's written on Wiki is real and everything that's on the internet is real. It's quite fascinating, people's take on things, that if they all think what's written about me is true, how on earth do I work for the B, Eurosport, TalkSport, Channel 4, ITV, of course. Yeah, I've worked for God knows how many broadcasters, and a lot of those people that are now sort of head of sport in those departments, I know quite well, and they sort of know the story. So I'm very fortunate. I haven't ever lost any work over it. And as I mentioned, I've kept all the transcripts from everything. And if there is any doubt, I say, well, look, you have a read of it and tell me what you think. And ultimately, the truth is in there, and it's one of those things. But it was 20 odd year ago, and you still get, oh, it's disgusting. He's a criminal. How can he work on TV? Well, look around. Everybody, no one's flawless. Everybody makes mistakes. It wasn't like I committed a crime that I got away with. I ultimately did a 3-year prison sentence, and if that's not enough for stepping over the threshold of someone's house, then I'm not sure what is. And obviously, ultimately my career was shortened. And everything that I went through to end up where I am today. So I couldn't, I'm not one of these that looks in the mirror and praises myself up. But from where I was and where I am now, I'm very proud of myself.
Yeah, definitely recommend people go and watch it. One of the most interesting darts-related interviews I've watched for a while. And one of the things I didn't know was that you used to travel to Stoke and practice with Phil Taylor, and you said he'd give you advice. So I want to know, what was the best and worst advice that you received during your career?
He was the most dedicated player I've ever been around. No stone was left unturned. He was meticulous in his preparation and how he practiced, and he tried to drum that into me. But ultimately, with my then problems with mental illness and then subsequent self-medication and everything else, I just completely sort of lost my way. But during those periods, it was one of the most enjoyable and best things I've ever done, but also sometimes humiliating, sometimes frustrating, sometimes absolutely mind-blowing. Like, some of the stuff he used to do on the dartboard was just, and a lot of people would go, well, did it not make you think, that because even more often than not, most people in practice play their best darts because you're in a perfect, familiar environment. And I'd go up there, and I'd be lucky some days to get anywhere near 10 legs out of 60. But what we used to discuss was, well, how many other people can, perform at that level? Sort of averaging back then way over a ton. And it was nowhere near enough. He did multiple 9-darters in a day or in that 60-leg session. And that was what I took from it. I thought, well, if I can somehow guide my way through, I might get to a couple of finals and get pumped by him. But, like everything else, it's all on the day. John Park did very well against him in that final and other tournaments. And, he was beaten a few times, but very, very rarely. So I was, at the time I was thinking, well, if someone knocks him out or, I can just dodge a few bullets along the way. And that's how I felt about it, really. But, there's absolutely no negative whatsoever from it, and it was humbling, but it was also an eye opener and something that we sort of still laugh and talk about to this day.
Well, let's get to the present day. And you also said that now you're living the dream with the TV work, still involved in the game, and coming up to 15 years since ITV got back involved with the darts with the Grand Slam 2007. You've been part of the team all that time. What have been the highlights over the 15 years with the ITV team?
Oh, well, just learning, really. Just learning as much as I can. And that sort of culminated, just a matter of a week or so ago in my first sort of run at presenting at the Modus Super Series, which was absolutely nerve-wracking but thoroughly enjoyable. I made some great friends for life. Worked with some absolutely amazing broadcasters and presenters, and I've watched, and ironically, I've watched people grow within the firm from being runners to now being directors. It's an amazing company to be part of and an amazing company to work for because everybody is treated the same. There's no hierarchy there. There's everybody is part of the team, and I think that's why we're pretty good at it. There's other people that are great at it, Sky included. But working for a firm like that literally include everybody and make you feel like you are all making, a part of the show. You're part of the show, and I'm massively indebted to them. I've learned more through working with, like I said, so many great broadcasters, and I've learned, what goes on behind the scenes. I'm absolutely murdered for asking questions and popping up in the TV trucks and, what does that do? What does this do? And it has just been amazing. Literally the best 15 years of my life.
And you mentioned the Modus Super Series there. I've heard rumours that you might be playing yourself in a week in one of the Modus Super Series coming up. Is that still on the cards for this year? Yeah,
I'm playing week 12. I was out last night practicing, and every now and again it's still there. I'm not. What's the worry is it's been such a long time since I sort of played under the lights and in that environment. So I think I'm going to be very edgy early on, but I'm in from the Monday, so I've got 5 days of it. So I just at some point, some of the stuff in practice I'm doing shows up because, like I say, every now and again I'll have a little 10-minute spell where everybody that's there and watching or I'm playing against sort of goes, make a comeback. And I'm like, not in your Nelly. Not a chance. My life is far too sorted to go back down that road, but it still doesn't mean that I can't enjoy the occasional game at all. Which I do now. I still play local league and Super League when I'm home, which is rarely. I'm home so little. My electric bill the other month was £2.90, so that was one bonus. But yeah, playing week 12. It's actually a week where there's a fair few of us old campaigners involved. Let's put it that way. Apart from Paul Nicholson, who of course is still a very young man. He's playing on the Thursday and Friday, so at least I got 3 days to warm up for him when he arrives, because there's going to be some serious backroom banter if I can get a win over Nico, which I doubt will happen. But yeah, I'm dreading it and looking forward to it. But I can't reveal who's in it because I'm not allowed to say, unfortunately. But it's a few good old timers, and it's a good group of lads, and a lot of my good mates from years gone by in the BDO days. So I'm buzzing for it. And of course, it was announced today that Does is in comms from tomorrow, so that'll be interesting to see how that works out, because I'm down on Saturday myself, and then down there for another week behind the microphone. So yeah, I hope it goes well for Glenn tomorrow.
Good times. Well, we look forward to that week when it's your turn. And since we last spoke as well a few years ago, we've seen the creation of the World Seniors. We've seen you play a few of the open events, the qualifiers, and we had the fans vote as well for the World Seniors match play. I'll reveal it now. I voted for Kostompe, my favourite, 300 times, but he still didn't win the vote. But do you think one day we might see you in one of those World Seniors events on the TV, on the stage?
Yeah. Like the Friday nights, I seem to go well. I just struggle with the getting up in the morning and then getting in the venue at sort of 9:15. Yeah, I struggle with that element. On the Fridays, I got to a quarterfinal, lost to a very good Jim McEwen, great player Jim. I think I had a dart double 8 to win, and then I won the other Friday night, beating Colin McGarry in the final. I've had a couple of 100 averages, but yeah, I've just ran into some inspired players on the Saturdays and Sundays. I could have taken an invite last year, but I said no. I want to go with the rest of them for a season, see what I've got left and whether I've got that desire and whether I enjoyed it or not. And even in defeat, they're great days out, as you can imagine. There's a lot of people there that I remember from when I was playing in my sort of mid to late 20s and onwards. So it's a great catch up. It's a tough school. If you don't get going quickly and the draws aren't kind, it can make you look a little bit silly. And I've just not clicked on either of the Saturday or the Sunday. But yeah, I'm planning on doing some more next year. Like I said, it'll tell me a lot how I go at the Super Series on week 12. Whether I've still got the appetite for getting my bottom smacked and coming back for more, because yeah, that's what. But I would only ever play in the sort of Modus stuff and the senior stuff. I have no aspirations to do anything else, but they're both going to be extremely tough, as I found out this year playing in 2 of the World Seniors events. But I hope to be playing in some of the TV events next year if next year I'm given an invite, but that'll probably be more down to if I perform in the Super Series.
We shall see. Well, it's going to be a busy end of the year for you regardless. As you mentioned, the Super Series commentating, you're going to be playing. ITV have still got a few more events. The World Championship, I assume you'll be part of the TalkSport team again, so it's going to be a busy end to the year anyway.
Yeah, we've got the European Championships and then the Players' Championships. Players' Championships are going to be a bit unusual on the Friday because England, of course, playing football Friday night, so we're starting our coverage from 10:30 in the morning, and I think it's all the way until 6 or 6:30 that day with no breaks. We can run straight through because obviously we've got to get off air for the World Cup football. And then, yeah, I'll be down alongside doing all the Modus Super Series stuff. I'll be down to Ali Pali think I'm down on the 15th until January the 3rd, working for TalkSport, which again is another wonderful experience and great lessons to be had.
Times well, Chris. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. Appreciate your time. Keep up the good work that you're doing, and we wish you all the best with your commentating and, of course, the playing in the Super Series when that comes around as well.
Thank you very much, Don. Keep up the great work yourselves. Always a great listen.
Thanks again to Chris for joining us. And now we'll move on to a look ahead to this weekend and the rest of the year as well. And coming up this weekend, we've got the first ever PDC Asian Championship spots in the World Championship on the line. A big pot of prize money as well on offer for the players. Who do you see as the main contenders for the title this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because we don't know for sure who's entering. We definitely have a good guess of some of them. And, if you look at recent Asian Tour Order of Merits, I think that is a good starting point. And we should add, it's not just the Asian Championship. There's also 4 Asian Series events, the only 4 on the calendar for this year. Hopefully next year it'll be back to a full slate of events. And those are on the 2 days before the Asian Championship. But if you look at the players who were the top 4 last year, I think those, or not last year, but the last year that we had an Asian Tour, I think that's where we have to start. Lorenz Ilagan, who topped it, Seigo Asada, who was second, Paul Lim, who was third, and Noel Malakdim, who was fourth, because those are the 4 players who have gone and played the Asian Tour the most and have had the most success. And they're probably the 4 best players playing in Asia. Seigo Asada, I think, is the best of those 4. And I think if he ever came over and gave the PDC a proper go, it would not take long before he was making his mark. I think he is a top 32 caliber player, if not better, once he fully adjusts to steel tip. He's one of the best soft tip players in the world. All 4 of those are among the best soft tip players in the world. But I think Seigo Asada has that little extra oomph factor that makes him a real force to be reckoned with if he commits to steel tip. But I'll go even beyond that. Look at the one player who has been playing the Challenge Tour at least a little bit this year, and that's Long Kai Fan. He's 45th in averages on the Challenge Tour over the course of the year. He had a couple deep runs, losing out to Danny Lauby in the semifinals, and the following event losing out to Scott Williams, the eventual champion, in the quarterfinals. And he had some really good results. He beat Robert Owen, averaging over a ton on the way to that quarterfinal on Sunday. He beat former tour card holder Alan Taburn on the quarterfinals the day before. And that was his first appearance since January. And maybe travel's a big reason to do that. It makes you wonder, what could have he accomplished if he had played the entire season? Granted, most of his matches he was averaging in the mid-80s, that match against Robert Owen aside. But you only beat what's in front of you, and he did that. And that's why he made a semifinal, quarterfinal. And assuming he's made the trip home and assuming he isn't still jet lagged, well, not home, I should say, back to Asia and then flown up to Japan, but assuming he's done that and he's not jet lagged, I think he'll be a contender as well, especially since we know he has match sharpness in steel tip going into that. Beyond that, we'll see who enters. There's always more players who will surprise. There's a lot of very good players in Japan. There's no guarantee that Seigo Asada will be the best Japanese player in the field over the weekend. So we'll have to see who enters. But I think the favorites have to be the 4 who have been the 4 form players historically on the Asian Tour, as well as Long Kai Fan.
It's a difficult one to predict, and at the time we're recording this at the start of the week, and of course this tournament is held over 4 days. Starting on Thursday, you've got the 2 qualifiers each day, the Asian Series events, and the final 4 players from each of those qualifiers. It's going to be 4 qualifiers. They'll all get through, and then the top 10 players from the Asian Series Order of Merit, they're also going to get through. So that's 26 players. We don't know who they're going to be yet. So that's all over half the field. We're not sure who's going to be in the event, but we do know 21 of that 48 players that are going to be in it. So a few names to pick out there definitely, and I'm looking forward to this event. It's going to be streamed as well on PDC TV, and the Asian Tour is something that we have missed for the last 3 years. You think back to 2019, the PDC, they were making moves in Asia with that Asian Tour, getting more interest in the steel tip side of the game, and players were coming over for the World Cup, the World Championships, and making their mark. You look back to that year, Japan made the quarterfinals of the World Cup, Seigo Asada making the last 32 of the World Championship, winning 2 games at Ali Pali, pushing Peter Wright, and speaking of pushing Peter Wright, Noel Malakdim as well, pushing him all the way in that first game, missing that match start of the ball, that now infamous game that we saw that night. And who knows how far down the line we would be now. We've still tipped Darts in Asia had there not been the long break that we've had over the last few years. But it'll be good to see some new faces, some players that we've not seen before. But as far as players that we do know, we've heard of before, household names, you're looking at your likes of Paul Lim, Lawrence Alagan, Paul on the show this week, and chatting to him, his love for the game, 68 years old, is still burning inside. And he said he feels like he can make a breakthrough in these TV events. He feels like that is something that he's still capable of doing. And you've got to love that belief and love that he's got for the game. And Lawrence Alagan, someone that we love watching. So hopefully he can have a deep run and we'll see a lot of him. And a few other players I'll give a mention to. You've got Man Lok Lung, represented Hong Kong in the World Cup last year, whitewashed Royden Lam on the way to winning the Hong Kong qualifier. And you've got players that have qualified from the UAE, Singapore, Philippines, Bahrain, Mongolia, India, China, Macau. So there's going to be a lot of new players, different players from different countries that we've not seen before. So that's the main thing that's exciting me. And hopefully this will be a staple of the calendar for Asian darts going forward. But we'll also see that Asian tour return next year as well, fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's actually possible that we'll have our last three questions each be about an event that involves someone from Bahrain. Because, as you mentioned, there are the 4 spots at the PDC World Championships up for grabs, and we're now less than 3 months away from Dartsmiths. We don't know yet who the Asian qualifiers will be from this Asian event. We obviously know who the Chinese qualifier is, and we know the PDC champion from Japan is, and therefore we know so far, I believe, 9 for sure of the 32 international and regional tour qualifiers. Which of those, though, is most catching your eye so far?
Yeah, the excitement's definitely building. And the one that jumps off the page straight away for me is Raymond Smith, because of how impressive he was last year, making the last 16 and coming so close to getting to the quarterfinals, and a win in that last 16 game against Mervyn King. That would have seen him finish in the top 64, and it would have given him a 1-year tour card. And we know the ability that Raymond Smith's got, and back then a tour card, he said it himself, that wasn't in his sights, that wasn't what he was looking for. But we had Raymond on the show quite recently, and he said the wheels are in motion for a potential move to the UK if it all goes well at Ali Pali this year. So he is now looking to give the PDC Tour a crack, and it was a great story last year with him and his son Kai both qualifying for the World Championship. And it was quite a story this year, wasn't it, because Raymond didn't think he'd played enough events to be eligible for that DPA Satellite Tour playoffs, but his manager said, no, I'm putting you in. And he said, you can put me in, but I'm not eligible. And turns out he was, and he made that trip at short notice, got there and won the whole thing. So he's someone I can't wait to see play again. And we should mention as well that the North American contingent of players, you've got Danny Baggish. He was gutted to be sat at home in America watching the World Championship last year, but he is going to be in the event this year. He's qualified via the CDC Tour. David Cameron won a World Seniors event, beating Phil Taylor in the final this year, and he said his goal to us was to get to Ali Pali. He's done that as well, so a debut for him. Leonard Gates, someone that he's got such a love for the game as well, as we've spoke to him before, and yeah, he's definitely going to enjoy that experience of playing at Ali Pali and the walk-on as well. And I'll give a mention to one last person, friend of the show, Darius Labanauskas, one of the best walk-ons in darts. Unfortunately, we've not heard it as much over the last year or so, but he is in the field, got through via the Nordic and Baltic Tour. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him as well. And don't forget, he hit a 9-darter at Ali Pali last year as well. So another leg like that would go down well.
Indeed. And yeah, I think the list so far is really looking good. I was going to mention the North American qualifiers. Danny Baggish has struggled a bit this year, but he's finally starting to seem to get some results and hit some form, making not just a board final, but winning his board at the Players' Championship event, trio of events in the middle day at the most recent one in August. Some decent scalps along the way. Simon Whitlock, Ryan Joyce averaging over a ton. And then the following day, okay, he went out first round, but he drew Luke Humphreys and pushed him to a last leg decider. Danny Baggish may finally be finding his feet in the PDC. And if he can play well here at the back end of the year. Maybe won't be enough to save his tour card, but at least give him some confidence heading into Q school that he can immediately win it back. Darius Labanauskas, as you mentioned, has really regressed a bit this year. It wasn't that long ago that he was a World Championship quarterfinalist, but this year he's not been playing well, not been playing anywhere near the level he was a couple years ago, and also not getting the results. That said, he's been able to do enough on the PDC Nordic and Baltic Tour to get one of the two spots. And he's a player who does seem to improve and play better on television. Maybe that's just what he needs to get back to a place where he's had success before at the World Championships, find his game and play well. Beyond that, Lisa Ashton guaranteed to get one of the two spots to the Women's Series Order of Merit. Not yet guaranteed to top the Order of Merit, but guaranteed to be there. She hasn't yet won on that Ali Pali stage. That seems a bit surprising because we know the type of player she is. Only just went and beat Bo Greaves in this past weekend, averaged 105 in another match. She is a player who can still bring it. I'm looking forward to seeing her, but I'm also looking forward to seeing the young Chinese player, Chen Zhang, who's had multiple ton-plus averages in the PDC Chinese Premier League this year and has been by far the best player in that. I didn't get to watch any of that, but he's obviously a player who is improving still and dedicating himself, and he has that every chance to be that first Chinese player to win a proper best of 5 set match on the stage. He had that chance against the late Kyle Anderson a couple of years ago. He was 2 sets up before losing that, Kyle Anderson fighting back. But maybe this year will be different. I want to see the type of player he is now 3 years later, because he's obviously improved his game based on what we've seen in the Chinese Premier League.
And lastly, away from the PDC, the WDF, they've released an update on the World Masters since we last spoke, all set to go ahead in December in the Netherlands. What were your main takeaways from the update we got last week?
Yes, this is the second of 3 events that are in these last 3 questions that are guaranteed to have someone from Bahrain, assuming they show up, as Bahrain will have a player on both the men's and the women's event according to the criteria. That said, the more important stuff on that, I like that they've protected players from the cancellation from last year. So the way it's done is if you're in the top 64 as of the qualification time last year or the top 64 of the qualification time this year, you're in. And I like that. It's making sure you've protected players. And it's same for the players from the regional tables and the regional rankings. Anyone who would have qualified last year is still in, plus anyone who meets the qualification criteria for this year. That said, we need to, I want to see what the format's going to be like. Obviously, assuming all the qualified, or not even all, but a good portion of the qualified players do decide to go and compete, it's going to be a huge field and a huge event. Will they continue? Will they have them all starting from the same stage? Will there be players who have a bye based on ranking? What will the format be? I assume it's still going to be, at least for the set play portion, best out of 3 leg sets. There's still, though, a lot to be determined about the format of this event. That will be confirmed in due course. But I like that they've protected players who qualified last year. I like that they've continued to do like what the BDO did to make sure that this is a world event. It also hints that there will be a world championship going forward, but we'll see what that is once they announce more of that, because they did announce that there will be a qualifier. So there's a lot more in the works from the WDF, and hopefully we'll hear that stuff fairly soon, because it's said it's not that far off now. It's just a few months until the World Masters, and if the World Championships in January again, just another month beyond that till that. But at least now there's some news, and it's good news. This event seems ready to go forward, and it'll be with as big, if not bigger, field than ever.
Yeah, it was a much needed update, and I know the last few weeks there has been quite a bit of talk on social media among players with the silence that there's been from the WDF, obviously working hard in the background, but the World Masters, that was creeping around the corner less than 3 months to go now. The lack of info for that event, one of their major events, it was a concern, but we now know the dates. They've been confirmed. The list of qualifiers is out so far, and as you say, it's a large list of players. You've got on there players that have qualified for the World Masters from events back in probably end of 2019, 2020, 2021, and this year as well. And this is going to be the first World Masters in 3 years since John O'Shea won it at the Circus Tavern in 2019. So this World Masters is going to need a lot more planning, a lot more organising than a regular year you'd imagine when we get to the second one next year. But yeah, the cut-off for the World Championship, that was part of that announcement as well. We're going to have the qualifiers for the World Championship, the last chance to get in the field. That's going to be at the end of the weekend, so on the Monday, December 12th. So that would indicate that we are looking at a return to the January slot for these World Championships rather than April that we had this year. But that's all still to be determined and announced. But as is also the entry cost, the schedule, the format, the prize money, the hotel packages, TV coverage, if we're going to get that, or if it's going to be on a stream as well. So there's still a lot more that needs to be put out there, but it was important that the WDF got something out there, and we've got a bit more clarity now than we did this time last week. And hopefully that next update won't be too far behind, and we can start to really look forward to this event, because it is the return of the oldest active darts major on the calendar after 3 years away, and you've got a lot of players on those lists that we could potentially see. And Paul Lim, guest on the show this week, he's looking at potentially entering the event as well after winning the Japan Open early this year. So there's a lot of names in there from around the world that could get to come over and compete. And if you are a darts fan, looking down those lists, the men's list, the ladies list, you've got to be excited at who could potentially enter this event.
Yes, indeed. And we'll see it. And not just enter, but then, so for them, they'll have to qualify through whatever their national qualification system will be. So a lot still to go in just a short amount of time. But anything else for this week?
As always, got to say big thank you to everyone for listening in, to our guests this week for their time. Thanks to you, Burton, for taking the time out of your holiday to join us. Hope you enjoy the rest of your time away. And a big thank you to our sponsor, Dartwolf, for their support. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, go to dartwolf.tv, give Dartwolf a follow on Twitter at Dartwolf180, and we'll be back next week to look back at the Euro Tour in Belgium, the PDC Asian Championships, and then it will be all eyes on the World Grand Prix. We'll be looking ahead to that event, maybe try and get on a few of the players that are going to be in Leicester for that one. And until then, if you're playing, if you're watching, you've only got to do one thing: make sure you enjoy the darts.
And if you're not yet ready to enjoy the darts, just hang tight for a minute and then enjoy the darts. But yeah, I echo everything Alex said. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back very shortly to recap the Belgian Darts Open and to look ahead to the World Grand Prix in Leicester, as well as just pretty much every weekend as we get into October, another televised event after televised event. That's just what it is until the World Championships. You're just going to have to deal with it. But there's definitely worse things to deal with, very few better things to deal with than darts on telly every single weekend. So start enjoying the darts now, because that's all you have to do.
To the fans out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and enjoy darts.